The most amazing thing about Henry Hudson, I think, is the mystery that surrounds him. In spite of the lasting and resounding impact that he's had on this city and on this nation, no one really knows who he was, what his true allegiances were, or what his true intentions were. There are some theories, some assumptions, but no one really knows. No one knows how old he was, exactly. No one even knows what he looked like. Any image we may have seen of him is nothing more than a speculative illustration done by some artist who lived at least 200 years after him. The only thing we know for sure about this guy named Henry Hudson was that he was a very knowledgeable and very capable English sea captain who made at least 4 voyages between 1607 and 1610 to seek and navigate the storied Northern Passage, the theoretical waterway shortcut to China. And it would be on the 4th of those voyages that he would meet his ultimate fate, tragically, alongside his 13-year-old son, John. But one of the most significant mysteries about Hudson is this: how did he even decide to come here in the first place? You see, on the 3rd of these 4 voyages, Henry Hudson had contracted with the Dutch East India Company, not to be confused with the Dutch West India Company, which, between 1623 and 1624, would begin to develop a settlement here on the island of Manhattan that would establish the embryonic roots of the place that we now call New York. But the Dutch East India Company was older, established in 1602, and really had one core business focus: trade with Asia. And if it didn't facilitate that, then it was not of interest to them. So when they drafted their contract with Hudson in January of 1609 to find this so-called Northern Passage, they gave him very specific written orders, and they very clearly defined the route that he was to take. And that route went like this. He was to leave Amsterdam, get out into the North Sea, and he was to take a hard right, straight north, over the Scandinavian peninsula, and around the north side of Nova Zembla, straight up into the Arctic Circle. Now, do you know where Nova Zembla is? It's about 1,000 miles east of Greenland. So yeah, nowhere near Manhattan Island. And to go north of Nova Zembla meant to cross the Arctic Circle, literally across the North Pole, in a 65-foot wooden sailboat. His Dutch crew, assembled and hired by the company back in Amsterdam, did not even know where they were going. So they definitely were not prepared. So yeah, this voyage, as instructed by the company, was not going to work. And Hudson already knew that, because he'd already tried it twice before, just not for the Dutch. And now Hudson's instructions also clearly stipulated that if he were not able to make it this way, that he was to think of discovering no other route or passage. In other words, he was supposed to come right back to Amsterdam, give them back their ship and crew, and then regroup with the directors to discuss any further exploration. Well, that is not, in fact, what Henry Hudson did. Because you see, Hudson had some other intel that he'd been keeping secret from the Dutch, from a compatriot of his, and someone whom you've also probably heard of. As my friend, the one and only Charles T. Gehring, explains.
He apparently had contact with John Smith, who was at Jamestown, and had received information from him and possibly some charts that there was something north of Jamestown that was worth exploring, and that it may very well be a passageway to the east.
Now, this is the same Captain John Smith you've heard of in the Pocahontas story. Decent amount of variation in the telling of that story, but this is the same John Smith. And it is only because of Hudson's blatant disregard for his company's orders that we have this incredible story of this incredible place that we now call New York. Climb aboard. History's cool.